Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and it's time to keep week 86 going as we continue Túrin Turambar Tuesdays for the rest of this series. 3 more readings are all that's left. Now, last week, Nienor encountered Glaurung, and we're not done seeing the tragic results of that. This week, she grows closer to Túrin, and he sets out to defeat Glaurung. On the next day, they bore her towards Efelbrandir, but when they came to Dimrost, the rainy stair, where the tumbling stream of Celebros fell towards Teglin, a great shuddering came upon her. Wherefore afterwards that place was called Nengirith, the shuddering water. Ere she came to the home of the woodmen upon Amon Obel, she was sick of a fever, and long she lay thus, tended by the women of Brethil, and they taught her language as to an infant. But ere the autumn came, by the skill of Brandir she was healed of her sickness, and she could speak. But nothing did she remember of the time before she was found by Turambar on the mound of Hauth en Eleth. And Brandir loved her, but all her heart was given to Turambar. In that time the woodmen were not troubled by the orcs, and Turambar went not to war, and there was peace in Brethil. His heart turned to Niniel, and he asked her in marriage. But for that time she delayed in spite of her love, for Brandir foreboded he knew not what, and sought to restrain her, rather for her sake than his own, or rivalry with Turambar. And he revealed to her that Turambar was Túrin, son of Hurin, and though she knew not the name, a shadow fell upon her mind. But when 3 years were past since the sack of Nargothrond, Turambar asked Niniel again, and vowed that now he would wed her, or else go back to war in the wild. And Niniel took him with joy, and they were wedded at the midsummer, and the woodmen of Brethil made a great feast. But ere the end of the year, Glaurung sent orcs of his dominion against Brethil, and Turambar sat at home deedless, for he had promised to Niniel that he would go to battle only if their homes were assailed. But the woodmen were worsted, and Dorlas upbraided him that he would not aid the people that he had taken for his own. Then Turambar arose and brought forth again his black sword, and he gathered a great company of the men of Brethil, and they defeated the orcs utterly. But Glaurung heard tidings that the black sword was in Brethil, and he pondered what he heard, devising new evil. In the spring of the year after, Niniel conceived, and she became wan and sad. And at the same time there came to Efelbrandir the first rumors that Glaurung had issued from Nargothrond. Then Turambar sent out scouts far afield, for now he ordered things as he would, and few gave heed to Brandir. As it drew near to summer, Glaurung came to the borders of Brethil, and lay near the west shores of Teglin. And then there was great fear among the woodfolk, for it was now plain that the great worm would assail them and ravage their land, and not pass by, returning to Angband, as they had hoped. They sought, therefore, the counsel of Turambar, and he counseled them that it was vain to go against Glaurung with all their force, for only by cunning and good fortune could they defeat him. He offered therefore himself to seek the dragon on the borders of the land, and bade the rest of the people to remain at Efelbrandir, but to prepare for flight. For if Glaurung had the victory, he would come first to the woodmen's homes to destroy them, and they could not hope to withstand him. But if they then scattered far and wide, then many might escape, for Glaurung would not take up his dwelling in Brethil, and would soon return to Nargothrond. Then Turambar asked for companions willing to aid him in his peril, and Dorlas stood forth, but no others. Therefore Dorlas upbraided the people, and spoke scorn of Brandir, who could not play the part of the heir of the house of Haleth. And Brandir was shamed before his people, and was bitter at heart. But Hunthor, kinsman of Brandir, asked his leave to go in his stead. Then Turambar said farewell to Niniel, and she was filled with fear and foreboding, and their parting was sorrowful. But Turambar set out with his 2 companions, and went to Nengirith. Then Niniel, being unable to endure her fear, and unwilling to wait in the Ephel tidings of Turambar's fortune, set forth after him, and a great company went with her. At this Brandir was filled all the more with dread, and he sought to dissuade her and the people that would go with her from this rashness, but they heeded him not. Therefore he renounced his lordship, and all love for the people that had scorned him, and having naught left but his love for Niniel, he girt himself with a sword and went after her. But being lame, he fell far behind. Now Turambar came to Nengirith at sundown, and there he learned that Glaurung lay on the brink of the high shores of Teglin, and was like to move when night fell. Then he called those tidings good, for the dragon lay at Kabad en Aras, where the river ran in a deep and narrow gorge that a hunted deer might overleap, and Turambar thought that he would seek no further, but would attempt to pass over the gorge. Therefore he purposed to creep down at dusk, and descend into the ravine under night, and cross over the wild water, and then to climb up the further cliff, and so come to the dragon beneath his guard. This counsel he took, but the heart of Dorlas failed when they came to the races of Teglin in the dark, and he dared not attempt the perilous crossing, but drew back and lurked in the woods, burdened with shame. Turambar and Hunthor nonetheless crossed over in safety, for the loud roaring of the water drowned all other sounds, and Glaurung slept. But ere the middle night the dragon roused, and with a great noise and blast cast his forward part across the chasm, and began to draw his bulk after. Turambar and Hunthor were well nigh overcome by the heat and the stench, as they sought in haste for a way up to come at Glaurung, and Hunthor was slain by a great stone that was dislodged from on high by the passage of the dragon, and smote him on the head, and cast him into the river. So he ended, of the house of Haleth not the least valiant. Not a lot of time remaining, folks, but a few things I want to make sure you do not miss. For now he ordered things as he would, and few gave heed to Brandir. Recall how his usurpation, intentional or otherwise, of Nargothrond led to its destruction and to the death of so many, including his friend Gwyndor and Finduilas. Here we see the beginnings of a similar pattern, and it does not bode well. Of course, we also have the tragic case of Túrin and Niniel, unknowingly brother and sister and husband and wife. Even when Brandir tells Niniel the real name of Turambar, it's not enough to break the dragon's spell of forgetfulness. I also think it's ironic that Dorlas, who had upbraided Túrin for not aiding his people, and then upbraided the people for their lack of courage, ends up with his own courage failing, unable to make the crossing of the Teglin, while Túrin and Hunthor do. And poor Hunthor, we meet him, and 3 paragraphs later, he's dead. And speaking of dead, come back next week for more with the dragon. For now, though, folks, that wraps up this week's Túrin Turambar Tuesday. Be sure to join me again next week when Glaurung meets his end and Niniel discovers the tragic truth. In the meantime, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can join the Content Council, get an ad-free feed, and a bonus episode every week. And please join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Word Nerd Wednesday. Podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. For those on YouTube, click the subscribe button and get all the PPP productions. And everybody be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.